Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started on our week 4 instructor session. And so, just a reminder, if you have any questions after you have viewed the meeting, obviously you can ask me or you can shoot me an email at sdavis@fortiscollege.edu. So, this is obviously Dr. Davis, and I am, just so excited about this meeting because in this meeting, we're talking about groups and teams and the stages of team development. So, these are all things that I think will be very beneficial to you in your lives. And I even break it down into a scenario for you later in the lecture. And I'm also going to go over your assignments like normal. So, let's go ahead and jump in. So, groups versus teams. A lot of times people use this term interchangeably, but teams and groups aren't always the same thing. So, teamwork and the ability to work well as a team is more important than you might think. Going into any field is going to require some form of teamwork or even group work as a whole. So, perhaps you're going into the medical industry after graduation. Well, a recent research study revealed that more than 400,000 patients die each year from medical errors in the hospital setting, and with the right teamwork skills in place, how far could this number be reduced? It's just something to think about. So don't think, though, that teamwork is only needed in a certain industry, like the medical industry or whatever. It's needed in all industries and the ability to work in teams and groups. Without the ability to work well in the team or group environment, clients and revenue can be lost, safety can be jeopardized, goals can fall by the wayside, and so much more. So, the need for effective team members is ever increasing in our society and even in our modern globalized world. One researcher even went so far as to say that as the challenge escalates, the need for teamwork elevates. And I can definitely get on board with that. I believe that. However, living in what we have, an individualistic culture, so that means we focus more on the I than the we, um, living in an individualist culture such as our own can mean that teamwork skills can be difficult to sell to students. So that's why this week's readings and some of the content on our weekly module are vital to not only exploring the why behind why we need effective team skills, but also the how and how to accomplish this in everyday life. Remember that effective teamwork skills can be the difference between that promotion that you've been wanting or the new job you've applied for, the ability to work from home. Not having effective teamwork skills mean that you're not going to be as effective in a virtual group or a team that way as well. And it also just adds added flexibility and even a level of survival. So, what's the difference between a team and a group? Because a lot of people use that interchangeably. Well, what if I were to tell you that all teams are groups, but not all groups are teams? Interesting, right? So, basically speaking, teams are specialized groups. So let's discuss how teams and groups really differ, though. The level of cooperation between team members and group members can really greatly differ. Typically, teams have a much higher level of cooperation than groups do. So, at the heart of all teams is collaborative independence, or what that means is the need to work together in order to be successful. So, team members who are working to advance their own agendas or their own goals will lack in that area of collaborative interdependence, as they're not working together, but rather they're team members only in the sense of the name. But but because of this, such teams are rarely successful in achieving their goals. So, in order to be a successful team, you need to have team members on board that want to be a part of the team and not working towards their own goals. With that in mind, teams usually consist of members with more diversity of skills that are often found in groups. So your readings and your materials this week touch on the fact that most standard small groups, you know, are that of a potluck membership, if that's what you want to call it. You may have lots of desserts in that in that group, you may have lots of desserts, but few main dishes. I think that's a good analogy for it. A lot of times, people in groups are chosen for roles not because they have the skills to complement such roles, but rather because no one else wants to do the role. So they're chosen because, we've all had leaders before who were chosen to be a leader not because they had great leadership skills, but just because they were the only one willing to do it. So, with that in mind, a team requires complementary, not identical skills. So, in doing so, team members are often chosen with more diverse skill sets and are used in roles which better blend with and complement those skills. All right. Teams also generally have a stronger group identity than that of a standard group. For example, I serve on an academic committee which is devoted to advancing knowledge through research. No one in this small group is distinguishable at our larger convention meetings based on our appearances. We don't wear name tags proclaiming our role in the committee, saying Dr. Davis and giving my title in the committee. Or we also don't exhibit anything that might identify ourselves from others who are also at the conference. In fact, our committee really doesn't even have a name. However, teams are generally more identifiable. So, team names are often important and often the subject of an intense debate. Teams have more of a sense of cohesiveness and unity or oneness, which exceeds the typical standard small group that you might be in. Lastly, most small groups require only a limited time commitment and few resources are required. For example, some of our readings discuss the fact that a small group, such as a hiring committee, for example, normally only requires a few meetings. Once the decision's been made, the committee disbands. Little or no money is necessary to sustain that group. However, teams often require substantial resources. They have long term commitments. For example, a sports team plays for a season and returns next year. While some of the players might be different next season, the team itself is still intact. So you can kind of see the difference between a group and a team there. So, as a whole, group members are the basic materials required for a successful team. And while all teams are groups, not all groups are teams, as we can see by the information I just kind of laid out to you there. So, knowing what you know now, have you ever been uh, previously on a work team or group or perhaps both? Just something to think about there. All right. So, why do we form groups and teams? any professional environment, in any professional environment, you will probably find yourself being a part of some type of team or group. And I've got a few listed there. Maybe it's a work team, a project team, a customer support team, a supplier team, design team. You might be part of a planning team for something, a functional team, or even a cross functional team. And you might be assigned to a committee, a task force, a steering group, a quality control circle, something called a flat team, an advisory team, an action team, and there's just so much more there. So, in any profession, for the most part, you're going to be working in groups and potentially teams as well. Now, businesses are constantly looking for ways to perform a job better at less cost. And because of this, they're forming teams for several reasons, but here's a few that I listed here. Better decisions. So, a lot of times businesses form teams just to have better decisions on things. Decisions are generally more accurate and more effective because group members contribute different expertise and perspectives to it. So think of that as, people that have these rich skill sets coming together and merging and bringing all those ideas to the table just to make better decisions for the business. That's a great thing to have. Next is a faster response. So when action is necessary to respond to competition or just to solve a problem, small groups and teams can act rapidly to attack what needs to be attacked. They can even increase productivity because teams are often closer to the action and to the customer. Team members can see opportunities to improve efficiency. There's a greater buy in. So, what that means is basically decisions arrived at jointly together are better, usually better at least, they're usually better received because members are committed to the solution and they're more willing to support it. They've got a greater buy-in there. They're also less resistant to change. So people who have input into decisions are less hostile, they're less aggressive, and they're less resistant to change as a whole. Improve employee morale. Well, there's personal satisfaction. Excuse me. Personal satisfaction and job morale increase when teams are successful. You know how that's felt before. If you're successful with something, you have a personal sense of satisfaction with them. And then reduce risks. So, responsibility for a decision is diffused on a team and it carries less risk for just one than it would with one individual. All right. So, let's talk about the 4 phases of team development. Although formed for different purposes, teams normally go through predictable phases as they develop. So even though you might be on a team for something and be on another team for something completely unrelated, later on in life, so the teams are completely different, they still mostly follow through the same predictable phases as they develop. So a psychologist identified 4 phases of team development, and that's forming, storming, norming, and performing. Some groups get lucky and they move through quickly from the first one, forming, all the way to performing the last one really quickly, but most struggle through at some point one or more of the phases. Um, and that's where you get a little bit of constructive team building as well. So let's talk about the stages. The first one we're going to talk about is the forming stage because that's the very first stage in team development. During the forming stage, team members get to know each other. And generally, team members are overly polite and they even feel a little bit awkward because they're all strangers and new to each other for the most part. So, as they search for similarities with each other in that team and attempt to bond with each other, they begin to develop a sense of trust. So members discuss fundamental topics such as why the team's necessary, who owns the team, like who's the leader, or who's the person giving the directives, whether membership is mandatory in the team, how large the team should be, what talents different members can contribute to the team. So in this stage, the leader functions primarily as what I like to call a traffic director. And so they're just kind of directing things loosely as they go. And so you want to resist the effort to go quickly through the first stages of team development, especially because they seem so superficial. But you want to try to move slowly through the stages because that's what helps to build that cohesiveness as a team. So you want to make sure that people start bonding with each other, finding similarities with each other, and start to develop that trust, because if they don't have that and they push through really quickly to one of the later stages, then sometimes things fall apart. So the next stage of team development after forming is storming. So during this second team development stage of storming, members define their roles and their responsibilities. So they've already gotten to know each other. They've already got a little bit of trust going on there. Now they're defining their roles and their responsibilities within that team. And this is where they decide how to reach their goals and to iron out the rules governing how they're going to act, react, and interact with each other in the team setting. So unfortunately, this stage often produces a lot of conflict. And that's why it's called storming. So you've got conflict there. However, a good leader should step up and step in and set limits and can help to control the chaos and offer suggestions to help guide the team through this stage, through this second stage. So basically, a good leader acts like a coach and they avoid negative policing. So teams composed of dissimilar personality types, they often take longer to progress through these stages because when you have people who have these different personality types, you've got all these emotions involved. And so you've got tempers flaring, and sometimes people are losing sleep because they're agitated by something the team's doing, and so much more. And overall, it's a power struggle. So The storm most often passes through and a cohesive group emerges, but this can be a really, pun intended, stormy stormy phase in team development. Now, once they push past this, they move on to the norming phase. And so once the storming phase passes, teams move on to this norming stage, and that's when tensions subside. Roles are clarified so people know where they're at and what role they play in the team. And from here, information begins to flow among team members. So the group periodically checks its agenda to remind itself of its progress towards whatever the goal is of the team. Formal leadership really isn't necessary because everyone takes on leadership functions in this type of atmosphere of some degree. And important data is being shared with the entire group. A mutual interdependence becomes typical in this stage as well. So in this stage, the group or the team begins to move smoothly in one direction, everybody moving together. And then the last stage that you have in the team development is performing. So unfortunately, some teams never make it to this stage. Some of them get stuck. Most of them aren't going to get stuck in forming because that's just, getting to know each other. A lot of times they get stuck in storming because they can't get over the power struggle. Sometimes they still get stuck in the norming stage, but if they can do it and they can push through, then they make it to performing. And so, like I said, some teams never make it to this stage, but for those that do survive the first three stages of forming, storming, and norming, the final stage is performing, and it can be quite gratifying. So group members at this point have established a routine and they have a shared language at this stage. They develop loyalty with each other and a willingness to help resolve all the problems that come up. They have a can-do attitude, and they progress towards their goal. Best of all, though, information in the stage flows really freely. Deadlines are met. Production often exceeds expectations. So, and that's the final stage of team development. Excuse me, just one moment. Okay. So, what is completed in these stages? Well, kind of a little breakdown that I wanted to note for you here. So, in the forming stage, you select members, you become acquainted with each other, you build trust, and you start to find similarities which form a collaborative culture. Then you move to storming. That's when you identify problems, you collect and share information, you establish decision criteria, and you help to prioritize goals. But don't forget, there's a bit of a power struggle in this stage as well, usually within the team. Next, you have the norming stage, and that's where you discuss alternatives to help you meet your goal. You evaluate outcomes, you apply different criteria, and you prioritize alternatives. So by this time, people are really on board with each other. And then hopefully, you move into the performing stage, and that's where you select whatever it is that you need to do to meet that team goal. You analyze effects, you implement a plan, and you manage the projects. All right. Now, I wanted to give you an example of a team moving through each stage. And so you'll have to bear with me because I'm going to read to you a little bit here, but I wanted to give you a thorough example that I came up with that helps to pull these stages together, that helps you really see how this would work in a real team setting. All right. So let me just get started. Here's a little bit of background about the team members. So a team has been pulled together from various parts of a large service organization to work on a new improvement project that's needed to improve how the company manages and supports its client base. The team lead on this project, her name is Sandra, and she's from the Chicago office. She's been in her position for 15 years as a project manager and a team lead, and she's been managing improvement projects for a long time. So other team members are Peter. He has 10 years of experience on various types of projects. His expertise are in scheduling, budget control. He's located at the San Diego office. Sarah has 5 years of experience. as an individual contributor to projects. She has a strong programming background. She has some experience developing databases. She's located in the Chicago office. Tom has 8 years of experience working on various projects. His expertise are in earned value management, stakeholder analysis, and even problem solving, and he's located in the New York office. Donna has 2 years of experience as an individual contributor on projects. So she doesn't have a lot of experience. She's located in the New York office. And then Ariana has 7 years of experience on process improvement projects. She has a background in developing databases. She has expertise in earned value management, and she is also at the San Diego office. So Sandra, who's your team lead and has 15 years of experience, has worked on projects with both Sarah and Tom, so she's familiar with them, but she's never worked with Peter or Donna or Ariana. Donna has worked, you don't have to remember all this either. I'm just going to paint you a picture here. Donna has worked with Tom, and no one else has worked with any other members of the team. So Sandra's been given a very tight deadline to get this project completed. Sandra, who's the team leader, has decided that it would be best if the team met face to face initially, even though they're going to be working virtually on the rest of the project. So she's arranged a meeting at the New York office, which is the company headquarters for the entire team. They'll spend 2 days getting introduced to each other and learning about the project. All right, so that's where we kick off the stages of team development. So the day of the face-to-face meeting in New York has arrived. All team members are present. The agenda includes personal introductions of the team members, team building exercises, information about the process or the project as a whole, a discussion around team roles and their responsibilities, a discussion around team norms for working together, so kind of a loose policy of how they'll work together, and also an introduction on how to use SharePoint site that'll be used for the project to help share ideas and brainstorm and store project documentation and so forth. So the team members are very excited to meet each other. Each of them have heard of one another, and although they have not worked together as a team before, they believe they're going to bring value to the project. So the team building exercises have gone well. At this point, they've met. The team building exercises have gone well. Everyone participated and seemed to enjoy the exercises. While there was some discussion around roles and their responsibilities, with different team members wanting key positions on the team, overall there was an agreement on what needed to get done and who was responsible for different components of the project. The on-site meeting in New York went really well. The team members are getting to know each other, and they've been discussing their personal lives outside of work, their hobbies, their family. Sandra, who's the team leader, is even thinking that this is a great sign that they're going to get along really well together. They're engaged with each other, and they genuinely seem to like each other. So that's the forming stage. They got to know each other. They built trust and bonds. All right. Then they moved to the storming stage. Remember what I told you, sometimes storms come in the storming stage. So the team members have gone back to their home offices. They're no longer in New York together. Now they're meeting virtually, and they begin to work on their project. They're interacting on the SharePoint site, and the project's off to a good start. That's when the arguments begin. So Peter has put up the project schedule based on the conversations that he had only with Tom and Ariana on the team. So he didn't talk to anybody else. Donna and Sarah, who's also on the team, but Peter didn't reach out to them. Donna and Sarah feel as if their input to the schedule was not even considered. They believe because they are more junior on the team, Peter has completely disregarded their concerns about the timeline for the project. They challenged Peter's schedule, stating that it was impossible to achieve and was setting the team up for failure. Now, at the same time, Sarah was arguing with Ariana over who should lead the database design and the development efforts for the project. While Sarah did acknowledge that Ariana has a few more years of experience than she does in database development, she only agreed to be on this project in order to take a lead role and develop her skills further so she could advance in the company. So she feels like she's getting the short end of the stick. If she knew Ariana was going to be the lead, she wouldn't have even bothered joining the project team because it doesn't do anything for her. She doesn't get those leadership skills in return. Additionally, Tom appears to be off and running on his own, not even paying attention to the team, just doing his own thing, not keeping the others updated on his progress, nor keeping his information up to date on the SharePoint site. So no one really even knows what Tom's been working on or how much progress has been made. Sandra, who's the team lead, had initially taken a side role during these exchanges, not really jumping into things, hoping that the team would work it out for themselves. However, she understands from past experience managing many project teams that it's important for her to take control of the team and guide the team through this difficult time. So she gets all the team members together for a virtual team meeting just to reiterate their roles and their responsibilities, which they already agreed to in that face to face meeting in New York, and also to ensure that they understood the goals and the objectives of the project. She made some decisions since the team just couldn't come to an agreement on things, and she determined that Ariana would lead the database development design component of the project, and she would work closely with Sarah so she can develop further experience in this area. So Sandra also reviewed the schedule that Peter created with the team, and she made some adjustments where necessary to address the concerns that Donna and Sarah had about, not being able to meet the goals. And she reminded Tom that this is a team effort and he needs to work closely with the other team members and not just do his own thing. So during the virtual meeting that Sandra held, Sandra referred back to the ground rules the team set in their face to face meeting in New York, and she worked with the team to ensure that there was a plan in place on how decisions are made on the team and who has responsibility for making those decisions. Because Tom overstepped a good bit there, and so did Ariana, who kind of took over and named herself um, a leader over Sarah. So, over the next few weeks, Sandra, who's the team lead, noticed that arguments and disagreements were at a minimum after she did this virtual meeting. And when they did occur, they were worked out quickly by the team without her involvement being necessary. Still, though, she monitored how things were going. She held regular virtual meetings to ensure the team was moving in the right direction. And on a monthly basis, Sandra brings the team together for a face-to-face meeting. So that's going to help to keep the team on track as well. And as the working relationships of the team members started improving, Sandra started seeing significant progress on the project. So if everyone's not working together and on the same page, you're not going to see progress. And because they were able to pull it together and come through that, they moved on to the norming stage. If they weren't able to come through their conflict, they would have just sat in the storming stage and never reached their goal. But they didn't. They moved on to the norming stage. And so in this stage, the team has now been working together for nearly 3 months. And there are definitely a sense of teamwork among the group. There are a few arguments and disagreements that can't be resolved amongst the team. They support each other on the project, problem solving issues, making decisions as a team, sharing information, and ensuring that the ground rules put in place for the team are followed. So, additionally, the team members are helping each other to grow and develop their skills. For example, Ariana, who was working closely with Sarah, has taught her many skills that she's learned in database design and development, and she's been able to take the lead on accomplishing some of the components of that project because of the fact they're working so closely together. Overall, the team members are becoming friends. They enjoy each other's company, both while working on the project and after hours by communicating via email and instant messenger on Twitter, over the phone, and so forth. And because they're doing so well in the norming stage, they were able to move on to the performing stage, which is that final stage in team development. So the team is now considered a high performing team, which is awesome. It wasn't easy getting to this stage, especially in the storming stage, right? But they made it. They're working effectively as a group, supporting each other, and relying on the group as a whole to make decisions on the project. They can brainstorm effectively to solve problems, and they're highly motivated to reach the end goal as a group. And when there is a conflict on the team, such as a disagreement on how to go about accomplishing a task, the group's able to work it out on their own without relying on the team leader, who is Sandra, to intervene and make decisions for them. So they're able to sort out their own decisions now. The more junior members on the team, which were Donna and Sarah, have really developed their skills with the support and the help of the other people on the team. And they have taken on leadership roles for some components on the project now. Sandra, who's the team lead, checks in with the team. She praises them for their hard work and their progress. The team celebrates the milestones reached along the way. And when necessary, Sandra provides a link from the team to the executives for decisions that need to come from higher ups or just when additional support is needed. The project is on time, it's within budget. That's what we want. Milestones are being met. Some are even ahead of schedule. The team is pleased with how well the project's going, as is Sandra and the executives of the organization. And that is a great example of how a team moves through stages to hopefully complete the goal. So here's a summary of the scenario. The project's ended. It was a huge success. The internal customer is pleased, and there is definitely an improvement on how the company supports its clients. It's been a great 8 months working together as a team with each one of those, and there's been some ups and downs. Each of the individuals on the project will be moving to other projects within the organization, but no one's going to be on the same project. So they're going to miss working with each other, but they vow to remain friends and keep in touch on a personal level and hopefully work together again soon. And the team's gotten together in the New York office to discuss the project, including documenting best practices and discussing what worked effectively and what they would improve upon given the chance to do it again. Sandra, who was the team lead, has taken the team out to dinner. They are joined by the project sponsor and some other executives who are extremely pleased with the end result. All right, so hopefully that scenario helps you to see team development stages, not just from what you're going to be looking at in your readings, but from a real world perspective. All right, so lastly, let's look at your assignments for week 4 in the course. All right, so this is what you should see. You know all the information now because I've went over it a million times about these links on the left. So we're just going to click on modules. And we're going to go down to week 4 in the course. And we've got, just like we always do, we want to go through this in order, and then we can go back through and cherry pick anything we want to go back to and review. So we're going to start at the week 4 overview. And the week 4 overview gives you a short summary of what we're talking about in this, in this lesson. You've got the objectives there, and you've got your normal to-do list, so make sure that you're going through all that information. We're going to click next. You've got your week 4 readings, what you need to be reading. Next, and you'll click this to access your textbook for the readings. Next. You've got your week 4 interactive lecture, and just like normal, you would just click this link. It'll open it up in a separate window, and you'll start at the beginning, and just be sure that you're clicking through and you're reading everything with that. So I'm going to close that out. All right. Then we have the week 4 discussion. And for this discussion, as always, your initial post is due by Wednesday at 11:59 Pacific time, p.m., obviously. You're going to respond to 2 of your fellow classmates by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. So for your initial post, you're going to review this information here. So it says, other than your online discussions in your various classes, perhaps one of the most significant examples of the importance of effective group communication comes in jury deliberations, where consensus is not immediately obtained. Whether or not you've served on a jury, what do you think are some difficulties you might encounter that can prevent a consensus? What are some strategies you or the group could employ to overcome these difficulties and reach agreement on a verdict? How could the same strategies apply to a small work group that cannot reach an agreement? So be sure to address all that in your initial post. And then for your 2 response posts, you're going to consider the following, which is listed here. In your responses to your peers, consider critically assessing your peers' solutions to the deadlock in the jury deliberations and/or the lack of agreement among members of the work group, if applicable? Can you identify situations when their solutions may not be successful? Maybe you can describe alternate strategies for reaching an agreement. All right, and once you've done this assignment, you would click Next. And once this meeting wraps up, I'm going to list your week 4 instructor session here so you can go back and review it anytime you'd like. And then you have your week 4 assignment, which is your speech project. It's a draft of your speech. So I would like you to submit a true draft of your speech. From the introduction you plan on doing, a typed out version of your speech, your introduction, the body of your speech, the points you're going to make on whatever topic you chose in week 3. Don't forget to go ahead and plug your research in this assignment as well. So I think last week my example was, let's say I chose the topic, why you should learn proper CPR. Of course, I'd start off with my introduction. I would list why I think you should learn it in different main points. I would be sure to integrate my research there, a simple according to the American Heart Association, and give my research that I found, or whatever research that I gathered in week 3. I'm going to make sure I'm putting that according to in there to give that verbal citation, add credibility to your speech, and then you're going to construct your conclusion. So if we click on the speech project details, it's going to give you the same directions and a rubric. And if you want to, you can type out your speech here, or if you just want to submit it as a Word document, that works for me too. Okay, so so this is going to be a fully typed out what you plan on saying in your speech, so I can give you pointers to start polishing it up. All right, and that is it for week 4. So you've got your assignments listed here. Make sure you get those submitted on time. And if you have any questions at all, make sure to reach out to me. Again, I'm available for questions after this meeting, or you can simply reach out to me using the course email. You can just click inbox over here and send me an email, or you can even type out an email to sdavis@fortiscollege.edu. So thanks so much for listening. If you have questions, let me know. Have a great week. Bye-bye.